In October 1966, a two-star American general looked at a reconnaissance photograph of Allied soldiers and said something he would spend the rest of his life trying to take back. "Look at those stupid hats." Major General Richard Caldwell had commanded armor in Korea. He had written infantry doctrine at the Command and General Staff College. He had spent 18 months coordinating operations across Vietnam. By any reasonable measure, he was a man who understood war. He was wrong. The proof would come not in a briefing room, but in a drainage ditch at 3 in the morning, with enemy soldiers searching 10 meters away, while he lay face down in jungle mud, barely breathing, praying the Australians beside him had been right about everything. When Caldwell's S2 quietly identified the soldiers in the photograph, Caldwell didn't blink. "I can see that, Captain. What I'm asking is why the hell they're dressed like they're going to a goddamn safari." 3 weeks later, he would apologize so completely that the Australian officer across the clearing would actually look embarrassed for him. But that moment was still weeks away. Right now, Caldwell was staring at a map of Phuoc Tuy Province, trying to solve an equation that didn't add up. The Americans had the 173rd Airborne. They had helicopters, artillery, and overwhelming firepower, and they were getting mauled. The Viet Cong's D445 battalion owned the jungle. American patrols walked into ambushes with mathematical regularity. So Caldwell asked about the Australians. The S2 hesitated before answering. "Sir, their reported kill ratio is 35-1. Caldwell's first instinct was contempt. Every ally inflated numbers. But MAC-V intelligence had independently verified the counts. Captured enemy documents referenced the Australian sector not as a combat zone, but as a no-go zone. The Viet Cong called it the Death Province. "I want to see this myself," Caldwell said. "Set up a liaison visit." What he didn't know was that his request triggered a 3-day debate inside the Australian command. Brigadier O.D. Jackson read the American's message, lit a cigarette, and smoked it halfway down before speaking. "Tell them any observer will need to deploy with our patrols. Full field conditions, no special accommodation." His operations officer smiled. "Sir, that's basically a polite way of saying no." "That's the point." When Caldwell's reply came back within 2 hours, "Acceptable, I'll bring my own kit," Jackson stubbed out his cigarette. Then he made a decision. He detailed the American general to the SAS. If the man wanted to understand Australian operations, he might as well learn from the best. Caldwell arrived at Nui Dat on October 23rd. That afternoon, a sergeant with forearms like fence posts looked at his American jungle boots and delivered the first lesson. "Those won't work, sir. Too loud. The SAS won't take you into the field in those." Caldwell's jaw tightened. He was a 2-star general being lectured about footwear by a sergeant. "I'll take that risk." "It's not your risk to take, sir. You're with 5 other men. Your noise is their noise. Your mistake is their death." The tent went quiet. What followed was an hour of systematic dismantling. Australian boots, softer sole, quieter tread, collapsible canteens that made no sound when full. Every piece of metal removed from his kit. Dog tags stuffed in a pouch, the eyelets on his bootlaces taped over, and finally an Australian L1A1 rifle pressed into his hands, heavier than his M16, with a different controls and a different sound signature. "The Viet Cong know the difference," the sergeant said flatly. "They hear an M16 in the middle of SLR fire, they know something's wrong." At 4:30 the next morning, Sergeant John McKay ran the patrol brief. He was maybe 30, with the build of a distance runner and eyes that absorbed light rather than reflected it. He did not stand when Caldwell entered. He did not salute. "We're not there to fight," McKay said. "We're there to watch." 30 seconds into the tree line, Caldwell understood he had never actually been in the jungle. Not really. McKay's pace was glacial. 3 steps, pause, listen, 3 more steps. In 20 minutes, they covered 300 meters. An American patrol covered 3 kilometers in that time, and according to Mackay's read of the terrain, would have walked straight into 2 ambushes. On the 3rd day, they found a Viet Cong supply cache, ammunition, rice, medical supplies, enough to sustain an entire battalion. Mackay photographed it from 6 angles, mapped the coordinates, and signaled withdrawal. "We're not destroying it?" whispered Caldwell. Mackay's look was withering. "We photograph it, map it, extract, and call in an airstrike next week after we're long gone. Patience, General. Patience is how you survive." On the 6th day, the patrol walked into a sentry position, 3 Viet Cong, 15 meters away. For one frozen instant, both sides stared at each other. Mackay's rifle came up. 3 weapons fired within 4 seconds. 3 enemy dead, 0 Australian casualties, but the patrol was blown, and they spent 2 days moving only at night before crawling into a drainage ditch at 3 in the morning while enemy soldiers searched 20 meters away. A Viet Cong soldier walked the edge of that ditch, stared directly at the vegetation hiding the SAS, and saw nothing. Not because of camouflage, but because those men had become part of the landscape itself. Back at Nui Dat, filthy and 8 pounds lighter, Caldwell stood before Brigadier Jackson. "3 weeks ago, I looked at a photograph of Australian soldiers and said, 'Look at those stupid hats.' I said it because I thought I understood jungle warfare." He paused. "I was wrong." He wrote a 30-page classified report. It reached MACV, Special Operations Command, and the War College. American SOG teams began training with the SAS. Long-range reconnaissance patrolling, slow movement, stealth over speed, intelligence over contact became foundational to American Special Operations doctrine. It still is today. The D445 Battalion, the same unit that had been ambushing American patrols with clockwork precision, learned to avoid the Australian sector entirely. Enemy documents captured in 1967 described Phuoc Tuy Province as the place of silent death. The Australian SAS ran 1,200 patrols during the Vietnam War, 5 killed in action. Caldwell kept a photograph on his desk until he died in 1994. 6 mud-covered men at Nui Dat. Mackay in the center, Caldwell on the end, looking like a man who had glimpsed something beyond his understanding. When visitors asked about it, his answer never varied. "Those are the Australians who taught me that I did not know a damn thing about jungle warfare."